Hello and welcome into Full Screen Podcast. I'm your host, Kira Aster, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host, grabbing her lasso for some Amazonian palace intrigue coming in 2025. It's Raven Ebert! How are we, Raven?
I'm good. I'm relieved that DC was not sold as part of the whole salvage sale vibes that I'm getting from Warner Brothers Discovery, where they're like selling everything that isn't nailed down. And I actually saw a salvage sale happening for the Twitter headquarters where they were selling a lot of kitchen equipment and really nice, like, coffee machines and stoves, industrial size, of course, so nothing that would fit into a home. And that's the vibe I kept getting from Warner Brothers Discovery as well, who were like, hey, do you guys want the rights to, like, Casablanca? Who cares about that old shit, right? But they kept DC. They've made heavy plans, so I'm feeling better.
This is amazing to just right off the bat compare the new Jim Gunn, Peter Safran DC Studios to Twitter, to the collapse of Twitter. I like it.
Yeah, I would say that they're quite similar. They had a huge moment in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And things started getting a little rough, from 2016 onwards. So,
Yeah, I love it. So, for those who don't know what we're talking about, it is the new slate of DC that we're referring to, that Peter Safran and Jim Gunn, the big guys over at DC now, they're just out there giving press conferences, just going around like executives, like, guys, we know where you came from. Never forget Romeo and Juliet.
that's right. Yeah. James Gunn is a horror guy from Trauma. He wrote a lot of directed a lot of low budget horror movies. And I think that is a good sign because he knows how to get things done with very little money and time.
How do we think Jenna Fisher is feeling right now? Her X-Man has made it real big.
Oh, I don't think she holds any grudges. She seems to be quite happy doing her Office podcast, going through and reliving those moments. And she talks about those times in her life with such fondness. And I'm like, okay, I wouldn't even be surprised if she felt bad for him. It's like a lot of pressure. And they both came from independent roots. And then to have this immense amount of money and like stock and investment put into your work, it's like not just a creative output, but you have to deliver financially as well. And that's very unpredictable, as we will be talking about later in the episode today. So it's a lot of pressure.
Yes.
And I know
Yes.
James Gunn has delivered before.
He
And
made us care about Guardians at least for a bit. Like, that's a win.
yeah, he did really well with talking about specific issues. I really admired how he ended up making Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 a story about parental abuse and family dynamics. Good for him. I hope he brings the same humanity to all the other stuff that he's working on. We mentioned the trauma horror movies. I'm so excited that he's announced a Swamp Thing in his lineup. I want to go back to like a 1940s style, like creepy classic, really moody horror of like a monster in the swamp.
Yeah, I have faith in James Gunn. He is making me care about DC right now. I highly encourage our listeners to look up the slate of DC that's been released. What's come? I think it starts in 2025. All these movies, TV show, Superman movie. There's going to be like all these sort of like a universe that's being built, and then Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves' Batman remains in a universe called Elseworlds. So really encourage people to read up on that. I think it's an exciting time for DC, even though the world around them is crumbling. But that's not today's topic. Let's quickly recap social media for our listeners before we intro today's topic.
Absolutely. If you have comments, questions, or I would say concerns about our mental health after going through so much industry talk about mergers and acquisitions in the streaming world, please send us your condolences on both Twitter and Instagram at fullscreen_pod. We are also on YouTube at Full Screen Podcast, and you can reach out to us with a lengthy letter of condolence at our email fullyscreened@gmail.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, give our videos likes and comments, and engage with our posts. It helps us beat the algorithm. I mean, gain exposure. And anything that you would like us to see covered on the pod in the future can also be sent through those beautiful channels. So come be social with us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
Let's hang, y'all. All right, so today's topic, it's a fun one. We are going to talk about rom-coms, or rather the return of rom-coms on streaming, and like good little product leaders, discuss the what and the why and the how, and also take this opportunity to celebrate our queen of rom-coms, Jennifer Lynn Affleck.
Oh, she's just Jenny from the block, y'all.
Yeah, always
Don't be
J.Lo.
fooled by the rocks that she's got. Don't be fooled by all the money that she's making from rom-coms, baby.
Rom-coms, J.Lo, streaming. Let's go. Welcome into the all hands section. This is where today we'll be discussing the winding path of the genre of romantic comedies, the golden age, the fall, and the rise on the horizon. All of it. So let's go all the way back. Let's look at the history of romantic comedies. So the genre of romantic comedies, combining both romance and comedy, became popular in the 1930s, late 1920s in Hollywood. While romance and comedy separately existed, and basically like everything else can be traced back to one William Shakespeare. The combo of these genres really rose with the invention of screwball comedy, which, very interesting, which was how studios were really drawing in audiences during the era of Hays Code. And I know Raven has thoughts about the Hays Code.
Oh my god, if people don't know what the Hays Code is, essentially it was a manifesto of morality that was enforced within Hollywood about the content of its movies. So when people come to me and talk about how free speech is valued here, let me fucking tell you about the fucking Hays Code, y'all. They dictated what could and could not be showed within the frame of the screen, of course, but also what is implied within the screenplay. So you can't, for example, talk about gay relationships or interracial relationships even if it's not shown on screen, because just implying it was going against the Hays Code. It's also why the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's does not match the actual book by Truman Capote, because it was made during the time of the Hays Code being implemented. And then when the Hays Code was finally lifted, everybody in Hollywood was like, thank God we can be horny again. And I think that's why a lot of sexuality was then shown on screen, because it was so prohibited before.
I think Hays Code was lifted around the 60s, no? Because that is when the 60s cinema just like went all out.
Yes, it was. That's why the whole story of Holly Golightly, the prostitute from New York, was changed into just a party girl from New York in Breakfast at Tiffany's, because of what they could and could not show. I think screwball comedies was also what people wanted to see during the 30s, because it was not a good time, y'all. People were
That's
like,
what I was gonna go into. Yeah, no, it's the Great Depression.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to actually look at Hollywood's history, and everything is a response to the society around you, right? Instead of I think we can see a lot of the stories, a lot of the rules respond to the changes in society that are happening instead of just sort of like leading the changes in society, which we can talk about another time. But this was also, a lot was happening at the time, coming off of prohibition, political instability happening with, things going on in the world, and the Great Depression. So a lot of things combined to really lead to the rise of romantic comedies. This feel-good genre, the screwball comedy, as Raven mentioned, and quickly skyrocketed. So many movies came out during this time that were rom-coms. Holiday, Bringing Up Baby, The Philadelphia Story, Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant, His Girl Friday, Rosalind Russell, Cary Grant, The Lady Eve, Ball of Fire, Barbara Stanwyck, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Never forget Hitchcock. That's a rom-com, y'all. So yeah, like all of these, just like a slate of movies. I believe there's like a Wikipedia article just like dedicated to the rom-coms of this time. And even though the genre has evolved over the years, subverting gender roles, being bolder with heartbreak, and making it more realistic, a couple elements usually remain, right? Humor and that fairy tale happy ending. Whatever form that is, it keeps these moments tied with the element of the meet cute.
I also love that it was a genre that wholeheartedly embraced women. Women were the
Yes.
protagonists, women were the central characters, women were the audience, and it's very rare to see things that make money be specifically catered to women, but they were doing it back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So
I mentioned meet cute, and it reminded me of this scene in The Holiday, one of my favorite romantic comedies, where the screenwriter Arthur Abbott explains to Iris Simpkins in the movie, quote, "Say a man and a woman both need something to sleep in, and they both go to the same men's pajama department. And the man says to the salesman, 'I just need the bottoms.' And the woman says, 'I just need a top.' They look at each other, and that's it. That's the meet cute." Lovely. I love to see it. As we were talking about elements, there's elements that we can identify in the rom-com, right? Common obstacles of parental disapproval, career, exes, class and wealth differences. These elements you can trace across, a lot of the rom-coms throughout history. And then there's common tropes, which we love to see: best friends to
oh,
lovers, enemies to lovers,
I love
second
enemies.
chances. Second chance love, the Cinderellafication. How many movies have that scene where the female lead is at the top of the stairs in a beautiful dress with beautiful hair and amazing makeup, and everyone stares? So many. And the playboy finally settling down, the love triangle, the forced contractual relationship turning real, Keanu Reeves coming in between true love. It's becoming a genre. And like all Netflix Christmas movies, the hunky shirtless Australian contractor slash construction worker. It's all there.
Doing a bad American accent. He's trying, but he's not at Kate Blanchett levels of accent work yet. But keep going, buddy. You'll get there one day.
To hear Kate Blanchett yell at me in German is all I want. Watch Tar, guys. Okay, so cultural impact. I mean, obviously, no, we all know the cultural impact of rom-coms. Our day-to-day, if we think about it, is just like filled with so much that has come out of this genre. The other day, Raven, my coworkers and I were talking about going to the Cat's Deli for lunch, and our chat then flooded on Slack with should we get the Meg Ryan table? And we were expecting someone at some point during the lunch to say, "I'll have what she's having." And it's just amazing. Like all of these like normal everyday moments that tie back to rom-coms.
When we were visiting New York, we went to Katz because it was supposedly, and I agree from personal experience, one of the best delis. And I got a sandwich stacked so high, I was like, I've got to unhinge my jaw to eat this. Only after my meal I was like, oh yeah, Meg Ryan revealed to the whole world that women can fake orgasms. And sometimes I'm mad that she gave the game away. Other times I'm like, you know what? It's good to be reminded from time to time.
As a threat to men. Also, we're not sponsored by Cats, just so you know. They're just amazing.
They got good
The
sandwiches.
the quotes that really dominate our everyday lives, like "you had me at hello, I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy, to me you're perfect, what, like it's hard?" The BuzzFeed list of Nancy Meyer's kitchens, and I have to say, it's the one from The Holiday. Let's be real, the Cotswolds kitchen. Small, cozy, rustic, magnificent use of space with open cabinets and fixtures on the walls. It's
I
amazing. It's the
I
best
like
kitchen.
Something's Gotta Give. Maybe it's a recency
That's the
bias.
popular opinion. That's the popular
I,
opinion. I'm gonna
you
go for Cotswolds.
you know me. I'm that popular opinion bitch. All my opinions are popular. So domestic
Yes,
bliss.
just beautiful. There's wardrobes that, dominate our everyday lives. Clueless still kicking ass. The yellow outfit. Nora Ephron being a household name and having such cultural cachet for being a rom-com queen. And most recently, Singing in the Rain being the sole reason Damien Chazelle gets out of bed every morning, guys.
Well, I mean, it's a great movie. I completely agree, but A Clockwork Orange ruined Singing in the Rain for me. So sorry, Damien. I just wish I had watched it in the right order because my fucked up life led to me watching A Clockwork Orange before Singing in the Rain. So when Gene Kelly is performing this title song beautifully, all I can think of is Alex DeLarge and the Droogs beating the shit out of somebody singing "I'm singing in the rain." Kick. It's what you're talking about, like the impact of rom-coms and the musicals that rom-coms were often presented in was so culturally large. It wasn't like relegated to a singular audience. It wasn't like, oh, you're the rom-com type. It was like everybody went to see it, you know? It wasn't for niche audiences before.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Let's talk about box office a little bit. So, according to Box Office Mojo, the top 5 grossing rom-coms of all time are: number 1, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, having around 241 million lifetime gross. What Women Want, around 182 million lifetime gross. Hitch at number 3, around 179 million. Pretty Woman, number 4, 178 million. And There's Something About Mary, 176 million. These are good numbers for rom-coms, y'all.
They're very good
By today's
numbers, but
standards.
they're all before like 2005.
They are. They are.
And very
I
interesting to
think they're
see.
all by like 1990 to 2004, 2002-ish. So around that period. Second golden age of rom-coms, perhaps. And some of these stars are problematic in these movies, but we won't go there.
Will
There's
Smith,
so
I
many
still
career.
love you. Kira does not speak for me. I will watch you slap terrible comedians all day long. Please.
No, no, no.
Please.
Raven does not endorse the views of this podcast. No, no, no. Those are not the views of this podcast. And we will not say that name again here. Careers made due to rom-coms: Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman, as we already mentioned, 180 million, Runaway Bride, Notting Hill, Ticket to Paradise, which recently just came out, which is actually amazing. Number 2, Jennifer Aniston. By the way, I'm listing them in top grossing order. So Julia Roberts is the top grossing romantic comedy star. Number 2 is Jennifer Aniston with movies like Just Go With It, around 100 million domestic gross. He's Just Not That Into You, where kudos to her. She had to be in love with Ben Affleck. 93 million. And Along Came Polly, which I really loved, at 88 million. And number 3 top grossing star in the rom-com pool is Drew Barrymore. The Wedding Singer at 80 million, Music and Lyrics at 50 million, Never Been Kissed at 55 million, and 50 First Dates at 120 million. Amazing movies. And there's so many more. I'm just listing the top 3. There's Hugh
Yeah.
Grant, of course, who's seamlessly transitioned from this like heartthrob to this villain. He's a villain in Dungeons and Dragons, the upcoming Dungeons and Dragons movie, and he's just like, yeah, I'll just be here chilling. He's a villain in Paddington, isn't he?
I mean,
Spoilers, by the way,
he's
guys.
English, so I guess the transition to villain doesn't take that much work. Sick burn! Take that, colonialism. Everything is fixed now. I
That's all
would,
he needs it on his resume, yeah.
yeah, I feel like there's always common threads because I think, as you go down the list of people that had their careers made to rom-coms, it's Hugh Grant, who was in Notting Hill and music and lyrics, Cameron Diaz, who was in um, the incredible, often underlooked My Best Friend's Wedding. I think that's actually a really complex movie. Of
Really,
course,
really good
I
movie.
was I was very surprised to not see my girl Sandra Bullock at the top of the list because her and Meg Ryan are what I think of when I think of like the rom com heyday.
I feel with the Lost City with Daniel Radcliffe, Channing Tatum, I feel like she needs to be in that top three. She's just like always been solid. Love Sandra, love Sandy Bullock, Ben Stiller, Richard Gere, Meg Ryan, of course, our queen Meg Ryan, Billy Crystal, Diane Keaton, Susan Sarandon, George Clooney, Anne Hathaway, Tom Hanks, Kate Hudson, Matthew McConaughey. So many people are known. Obviously, they've done such great work since their time in rom-coms, or they continue to do rom-coms, but these are household names because of this genre, and respect.
Absolutely. Especially Maddie McConaughey. So let's talk about some rom coms and streaming because we were focused more on the theatrical side. And we'll dive into the paradigm shift later. And I think streaming has actually had a role to play in how rom coms have kind of moved away from the theater. But I think streaming has been a good home. Well, let's talk about The Big Sick. Obviously, it went to theaters as well. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for Kumail Nanjiani and Emily V. Gordon. But it
Excuse
was.
me, Marvel star Swole Kumail Nanjiani.
He's forever Dinesh Chugtai from Silicon Valley to me. So he worked on that movie that was financed and produced by Amazon Studios. So it is listed as an Amazon original. And it's definitely a pretty big financial success to really indicate that we're like moving into a new era of rom-coms where it's more thoughtful, more considerate about the experiences of the viewer, and I think trying to combat some of those tropes that you talked about without looking directly into the eyes of the audience and saying, hey, kids, don't stalk women. That's a no no. So I think that this was a thoughtful movie and, it ushered in some very good rom coms that we're coming up with. Let's go through some of the big name releases. This is not, an indication of quality. It's just that they did they did well and people liked them. So we'll start with Set It Up with Glenn Powell and Zoe Deutsch. You'll be seeing Zoe Deutsch talked about a lot, but this was like a really charming little film that was supposed to come out in theaters and Netflix picked it up. So I think that's the beginning of a pattern. Always Be My Maybe from the subgenre of Keanu Reeves Ruined My Love Life, starring Ali Wong and Randall Park. Tom's
Yes, this movie.
Yeah, I think it's high time Keanu Reeves was objectified as a sex object again. He's had his fun with John Wick, but let's slobber over him again, guys. We had Palm Springs with Christine Milioti and Andy Samberg. We had The Lovebirds on Netflix with Kumail Nanjiani and Issa Rae, another pandemic movie that came out in 2020 on Netflix because its theatrical release was scrapped due to COVID-19. We had Persuasion with Dakota Johnson. It is listed as a romantic comedy because somebody forgot to read the book. So I guess they figured Persuasion by Jane Austen is a romantic comedy. Fuck you. But it's listed
Did
as
they
one.
mean 50 Shades of Grey?
Yeah. Low on the romance, heavy on the comedy. We also have Our Souls at Night on Netflix with Robert Redford and Jane Fonda. Like, what a pair. What a pair.
Mm.
What a throwback to classic rom-coms, obviously. So much diversity. We're talking about Crush on Hulu with Rowan Blanchard and Auli Carvalho. It's so fun to see Moana in person and not just as a
Yes.
voice. And then you have like Father of the Bride on HBO Max with Andy Garcia and Gloria Estefan. It's the third time that this movie has been made, but the story is such a classic. You keep updating it for new times, new centuries. So, of course, you have Fire Island, you have Happiest Season, starring rom-com queen Kristen Stewart. That was a very sweet movie, and I also think it was refreshing to see the other side of the coming out narrative. What it's like for somebody who's out and proud to have to deal with somebody who isn't.
Surprisingly lovely movie. Also, Mackenzie Davis. Love
Mm-hmm.
Mackenzie Davis. She was so good in this movie. And again, if you guys have not seen Station 11, please go watch
Yeah,
Station 11.
she
Incredible.
does a very good job of humanizing characters that aren't necessarily likable. I think she's a good performer.
Exactly.
And it had something else to say besides being schmaltzy. I think, of course, like it was nice for, the gays to have their own Christmas movie. I think that's cute, but there's more to it. I think Alex Strangelove also received a lot of positive feedback. I didn't watch it, but I think it's cute that teens also get to have their like little rom-com revival as well. There's of course like a bunch of stuff that's happening on streaming that is for specifically teen audiences, but that doesn't stop adults from watching it. You have, of course, the objectively fucking terrible Kissing Booth series with Joey King and Jacob Elordi.
Can I say, apparently, Ted Sarandos, the sole CEO of Netflix, has said that that's like one of the, if not the most watched series of movies on Netflix, which give us the numbers, man. Give us the data.
I'm
That's
pretty
all I
sure it's people who are watching it to make reviews of it, so they have to watch it a second and third time to take like screen caps and shots and like use for references in their video essays. It is probably a lot of hate watch, and it's its own industrial complex that has pushed this to the top. So make of that what you will. But you also have another terrible series of movies, Tall Girl 2. They are rom-coms. Then you have a pretty decent new entry into the teen rom-com and teen comedy genre in general, Do Revenge, with Maya Hawke and Camila Mendez.
That was
They
really
are
good, actually. I really enjoyed it.
they have a lot of great chemistry, and it's a decent attempt at satire. And of course, the most powerful cinematic universe of all, the Noah Centineo cinematic universe. He's been in all the movies with To All the Boys series with Lana
Yeah.
Condor. He was in Sierra Burgess as a Loser with Shannon Purser, My Girl Barb. Should have stayed dead in the Upside Down than, catfishing Noah Centineo. But there's also another one he did called The Perfect Date with Camila Mendez. Again, you see a lot of same faces being juggled around in the genre. That's kind of how it happens.
Are these all Netflix?
So far, I've been talking about mostly Netflix. Yeah, because
Good for
Netflix
them.
is flooding the market with crap as per usual. They've also been around longer for sure, but
Yeah. Yeah.
guess what other market Netflix is coming for a chokehold? Because if you thought Hallmark, you're fucking safe, then you're not safe. Sleep with one eye open because they're coming for the Christmas market. They
Yeah.
have
They're
a
here.
Christmas Prince series. They have the Christmas Switch series. Vanessa Hudgens. Each accent is worse than the previous one. What will happen next? You have another Vanessa Hudgens one, The Night Before Christmas. You have our high lady of teen rom-coms, Lindsay Lohan, coming back to claim her crown in Falling for Christmas. Amnesia, rich heiresses, skiing accidents, murder. It's got it all. What does it not have? Plot, character development, cohesion. Who cares? It's Lindsay. She's back. She's gorgeous. She's got a head full of red hair and that sexy husky voice. I will do anything you tell me to, Lindsay.
Is
I
she
will
still
do
doing
it.
the Eastern European vague accent, or is she out of that phase?
No, Mama, she's an out and proud American over here. But
Okay.
I do know that she learned a little bit of Arabic because she lived in Oman for a while, which speaks very close to me because I grew up in Oman. So shout out to Lindsay. I love you, Habibi. And then, of course, the final, I would say, aspect of the evolution of rom-com and streaming is that it's not limited to a movie anymore. So all those complaints you have about rom-coms being shallow and not giving enough time to characters, it's being addressed with that time limit because we have like specific rom-com series. You know, we started out with The Master of None and the Mindy Project. After it was canceled by Fox, it was picked up by Hulu. Now we've got Bridgerton, we've got Sex Education, we've got Love Victor on Hulu, we've got How I Met Your Mother on Hulu, Normal People, The Sex Lives of College Girls on HBO Max, and of course, the amazing, the talented, the wonderful Emily in Paris on Netflix. What a show, what a commentary on Paris, what a commentary on French people. America and France will be forever friends. What a great, groundbreaking show about a American girl just failing her way to the middle in France. Congrats, we did it. We also have like K dramas and J dramas and other like Asian and Southeast Asian TV shows that are like romantic comedy focused on all of these platforms. Of course, we also have all the cutesy little animes that are made for girls as well. So it's not just shonen, guys. Sometimes we get like really cute things. And I watched Uran High School Host Club on Netflix. I don't recommend that experience. It will fuck you up. But yeah, there's a lot of new outlets for rom-coms on the streaming. So it's a good time.
So this is a special section today to celebrate the MVP of rom-coms, Jennifer Lopez. So I've been watching a lot of interviews, Raven, of Jennifer Lopez lately because her new album just came out. This Is Me Now, as opposed to This Is Me Then 20 years ago. And she's talking a lot about Ben and her newfound love with Ben Affleck with Zane Lowe in the Zane Lowe interview on YouTube. You can watch it. And y'all know our feelings about Ben.
What is there
He,
to talk about to the love of Ben? Oh, I love it when his breath smells like Dunkin' all day. I love it when he starts a fight with David Fincher about wearing another sports team's logo because he fucking loves the Boston Red Sox so much. Good God. What is there to
yeah.
love? I can't wait to hate listen to this album, by the way. I'm gonna be there.
It's very listen. Of course, his breath smells like Dunkin'. He's doing the Super Bowl ad for Dunkin'. Like, Ben, get it together. So he hasn't been doing it for us for a while, and his new movie about shoes or whatever. Like, J.Lo, whatever, but we love you, so we'll support you, J.Lo. And this is why we declare you the MVP of rom-coms, because to date, Jennifer Lopez has done 10 romantic comedies. 10! And this is counting Second Act, 2018 Second Act as a rom-com, which we can argue that it may not be, but it's between 9 and 10, her number. So that's pretty high. And I just wanted to take this moment to shout out 3 of my top faves. By the way, this section contains major spoilers. Proceed with caution.
Spoiler alert.
All right. So the number one movie for me, as a J.Lo romantic comedy, is Made in Manhattan from 2002. So this is directed by Wayne Wong, director behind the Joy Luck Club. So Good one right there. And guys, this one has my heart. Rafe Fiennes looking real fine. Like those ill-fitted suits, busting out that French in the elevators, just like absolutely sensational the way he stares at things. He's got, he's got those eyes. That little paperclip trick for public speaking that he tells J.Lo's son in the movie. He's absolutely perfect in this. And I would declare this is actually the best he's ever looked in a movie. Maybe the English Patient, maybe the Constant Gardener, but he's just so good in this movie.
I love that you're like, she has so much chemistry with Voldemort. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing. She should be happy with Voldemort over freaking Ben Affleck. I really appreciate the energy you're putting off here.
Listen, it's Lord Voldemort to you. So great movie. His political, so he's a senator in the movie and she's a maid in the movie, and he is staying at a hotel that's very swanky, and she's a maid at that hotel, and that's where all the hijinks take place. There's like a lot of like political speeches in the movie, a lot of just like he's just having a lot of fun saying a lot of like garbage that we don't see. That's not a politician that exists. And New York and all of its glory, just absolutely beautiful scenery of New York, and that fits so well in the rom-com genre in general. But also I think because this is about this like rich senator and this maid, right? So this is the perfect place to set this movie, I thought, in terms of like also making a commentary about classes, the culture, like the class clash and the romance between like such different classes, if you will. And to set this in New York where you're always uncomfortably clashing with all kinds of people, whether you want to or not, you're just always like in it. And to pose, it's very smart to actually pose a romance in the middle of it, like made it really unique, made it really different. There's so many just like fun moments in this movie. There's a, obviously, as we mentioned up top, Cinderella moments happen in all rom-coms, and her Cinderella moment in that like beautiful blush dress and the Harry Winston necklace and her like gorgeous skin and the beautiful hair, it's just all incredible. And the way Rafe finds his character stares at her.
I will buy all of your beauty products, J.Lo, if they make me look a fraction of how good you look. This bitch has not aged a goddamn day. And I want to learn her witchcraft. I want to learn what satanic rituals she does to look this fucking good. I will do it. I don't care. You have found the fountain of youth, JLo, and it is so incredible to see like how little she has changed in her look. Like she still looks just that beautiful.
Those Vogue videos of this is my beauty routine, like come go to bed with me or something like that. Her routine was so basic that I was like, yeah, she has like a dungeon where she's doing blood transfusions. Like, there's no way.
100%. She's getting the blood of virgins and eye of newt or whatever. It's definitely something else.
Yeah, amazing movie. I would say my favorite moment, I actually rewatched it pretty recently, is they're having a fight. Rafe has just found out that she is not, in fact, a rich person named Caroline. She's a maid of the hotel named Marissa or Maria, I forget. And he's chasing her. And by the way, she looks great in the maid uniform too, the lavender and white uniform. And I'm like, you didn't need that gown. Girl, you look great. And he's chasing her as paparazzi are taking photos because he's a hotshot senator. And he stops her and he says, was any of it real? And my God, it works for me 100% of the time. And yeah, perfect scene, a great movie, highly recommend it. That's my number one from J.Lo's rom-com filmography. All right, number two. It's Marry Me from 2022, so from last year. So made by Kat Coiro, who's done smaller films like Life Happens, A Case of You. And this movie, listen, this movie is new. I'm still trying to decide where it fits in the filmography, but there's something so I don't want to say cringe. Like what do I say? It's so honest. It's
Okay.
intimate.
It's painfully sincere. It is so sincere. It is so sincere. It feels personal, like you're being exposed to a part of a person that you should normally get to after knowing them for 10 years, but you are instead subjected to that experience within 10 minutes and you're not prepared. It's the type of sincerity that I feel invites mockery because it has no layers of protection, of self-awareness, or even like an acknowledgement of what they're doing. There is no attempt to cloak themselves in irony, to shield themselves from criticism. They're very vulnerable and they're putting themselves out there. Like, whoa, it's
It's
so
moving too
sincere.
fast,
And
babe. Let's slow it down.
it's very raw, yeah. And I think that in my younger, more cynical days, I definitely would have turned this shit off because it came off as saccharine. But I think in an effort to practice kindness, I'm just letting myself watch the experience. Very kind to all of the people
Yes,
within the
the
movie
kindness and
itself.
patience was very, in a way, it's so real. And I felt, I mean, Owen Wilson, we can talk about whether he's fully there or not, or if he's like thinking about his Loki script during the filming of this. But the focus on J.Lo's character is so she's also a famous singer. Her character in this movie is a famous singer, and the whole plot is that she is engaged to another famous singer, Maluma, played by Maluma, and they are going to get married on stage at a concert. Spoiler, she finds out he's cheating on her during the said concert, and she picks someone from the audience to say, yeah, I'll pick a random person and I'll marry you. And this random person, this math teacher in New York, Owen Wilson, single dad, is that person. And as the movie goes on, there's a very sweet moments of them like walking around New York talking about their lives and actually like laughing at the fact that this is like somehow real, that she's like among all of the people she's chosen him, and it's so like absurd, and the media is like watching and waiting for them to marry, and they're treating it like as okay, we'll just treat this as like a period of dating and then we'll call it quits. But like the more they get to know each other, the more they get to really open up, and the more like I feel like we see a lot of J.Lo, like the actual person, where she talks about, whatever you want to call them, the personal letdowns or stepping stones or lessons that she's had in romance in her life.
Yeah, I think there's a very meta moment within the movie that Owen Wilson asks Jennifer Lopez about why she's taking this news the way that she is, because she's rich, she's beautiful, she's famous, she's on top of the world. Why is she so hurt and sad? And the character of Jennifer Lopez talks about how she felt undervalued all of her life. And I think that there was a little bit of an autobiographical quality to it, because beautiful women are often treated exactly like they are in a lot of TV shows and movies, where they're just made as objects and not seen for the people under.
Like, was she acting? Like, I was like, is this J.Lo? Just
No,
wink, wink, this is me.
that's where it got to me, where I was like, this is so sincere. I have never like seen this side of Jennifer Lopez, especially through her music. She makes party music, good time, fun time music. I don't really remember jamming out to a breakup song by Jennifer Lopez. I know she has them.
Because we're supposed to see ourselves in Owen Wilson's character, and her explaining that she's never going to stop trying to find love because she always believes that there is something that will work out for her despite her failures. And it was just like absolutely lovely. Like I was not expecting to kind of see all of this, to get a
Yeah.
window into her soul like this. So absolutely lovely. Highly recommend this. There's also like Sarah Silverman is in this movie. There's a very cute kid in the movie, Owen Wilson's daughter, and just like a nice chill movie. Obviously there's like the whole element of the performance. She is a singer in the movie, so you see a lot of concerts. There's a lot of original songs in the movie, the outfits, the glam, the sort of behind the scenes of what her life is like as a superstar musician, contrasted with her like quiet, down to earth persona. It all is very well done. And again, I also actually really love the soundtrack of this movie. The title song "Marry Me" is actually really good, but I really love the because "Marry Me" in the movie she's written for Maluma, and the other song "On My Way to You" she has written for Owen Wilson's character, and it's a really great song, actually really good. And in general, like a really nice watch for this time of year or any time
Yeah.
that you want, honestly.
Anytime. And it speaks a lot about Jennifer Lopez that she's come around to playing the Ray Fine character from Made in Manhattan, where she's at the top of the social pyramid and she's trying to find love with somebody who isn't at the same level as her, but she's still gonna make it work. So it's like she's still playing that role, but she's on the other side now. So that's cool.
The
But
cultural
let's
clashes in New York continue.
yeah, let's move on to your this bullshit of picking this as number 3. This
Listen,
is this is your New York bias coming in to place the next cinematic gem we're about to talk about in number 3. This is your anti San Francisco agenda here. I see what's happening.
number 3 on this list is The Wedding Planner from 2001. So
Rig,
this
stop the count.
this is made by Adam Shankman, who's behind Disenchanted, Hairspray. So he's got a lot under his belt. So this movie, I have to be honest, I really struggled with putting this at number 3. It was my number 1 before, but I had to go with Made in Manhattan because, yeah, there is some New York bias happening.
Thank you
Whatever.
for admitting this. Yeah, thank you.
You know, Matthew McConaughey being a doctor in San Francisco and not a tech bro. We can argue. There's some room there. There's definitely some room there. And so the story of this is obviously J.Lo is a super successful wedding planner who falls for the groom of the wedding that she's planning, played by Matthew McConaughey. It's a super simple plot, icky AF. I mean, we love it, but if it happened in real life, there would be like a Leanne Rimes type Wikipedia controversy section. Kind of like shitty behavior, but honestly, unless it's like super hot people like J.Lo and Matthew McConaughey, then it's fine.
Yeah,
It
I think it made room for the icky by giving the bride second thoughts as well, because it would have been, of course, very shitty if she was super into it and she was absolutely ready to get married to him. But it comes down to something being more of a mutual understanding, which is, of course, like a nice way to just say, hey, now you can support this horrible relationship guilt free, but also like yay empowerment for girlies as she goes and tries to find her way on her own journey. So there's
it
there's some
feels
there's
more
some
organic. Yeah. Again, it has a lot of like great rom-com tropes and like elements. I love the rom-com jobs. Usually it's in fashion or magazines. This is a great rom-com job, being a wedding planner, being very close to just like the fairy tale romance, right? And
yeah.
very much like a lot of other movies like 2 Weeks Notice and 27 Dresses. Our character is very organized and very dedicated and very successful and very type A and helping people achieve their dreams. But personally, she's very lonely and kind of lives an empty, glamourless life. Her apartment is actually really amazing in this movie. We were talking about like the Nancy Meyers kitchens. I really liked just like her. It's I love a modernist, just kind of what you see at like a West Elm store. And I
This
really like to
bitch,
see that.
they shot this bitch in some other place, like a studio lot or something. Ain't nobody got no houses like that in San Francisco.
It's
I
possible.
mean, you can make probably bank from being a wedding planner because there's a lot of old money here from like railroads and shit, which I assume that, yeah, you plan Ivy Getty's wedding, you can get three houses that look like that for sure. But it is a stark contrast to like everything else that you see in the city.
You get to see Napa. Yeah, you get to see a lot of good stuff
Yeah.
there. I it's We were talking about elements of the rom-com in this movie, right? It's got embarrassing and overprotective parents. We love to see it. Great, like honestly, a great movie, great chemistry. Matthew is in his prime. Let's never forget Oscar winner Matthew McConaughey was a rom-com star first. And Judy Greer is the amazing, chatty, delightful best friend, and that dynamic actually like really worked for me. Speaking of like favorite scenes, I mentioned a couple of my favorite scenes from the other movies, but I really love that Justin Chambers, Massimo, who's supposed to be her fiance, like the childhood friend that she had. First of all, his Italian accent. What is happening? But the scene where he's asking her to sit down, he's gonna make her a very American meal, and they're gonna be buddies. I can't do his like horrible Italian accent. And he makes her mac and cheese, and it's just kind of cute. I really like that scene, and I will always remember it. And as ridiculous as it is, it just fits into the vibe of the movie. So yeah, that is my number three. And I don't know, Raven, if you have any thoughts about this one before we move on to our least favorite.
This is rigged. This is number one. Stop the
It's
count. Stop the steal. And that's all
number
I
one
have to
remains
say.
Made in Manhattan. Ask me next year if the list changes, but for now, this stands. All right, so the least favorite.
Boo.
It's Geely.
I
It's so bad.
It's what are you talking about? It's romantic. It's hilarious. Is it a comedy? I don't know. But it's funny as shit. I'll tell you that much.
Just bad, awful, bad, problematic. Like
Yes.
Ben Affleck, the love of J.Lo's life,
Ben
and J.Lo
Affleck
are
Ben Affleck continues to ruin lesbians. He did it with Chasing Amy. Now he's done it again with Geely. This is
just.
a movie of just stupendous proportions of stupidity. It was made by incredibly competent people who have done
That's
work.
what I was surprised about. This is made by Martin Brest, who's behind Scent of a Woman, Meet Joe Black, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. What happened here? Like,
It
did
was
they
the
phone it in?
media circus around the relationship between Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez that actually changed the script, where the studio financing the movie said focus more on them and them being a couple because of the intense media scrutiny that they had.
They were
So,
asleep at the job, y'all. This was just really bad. There's like really problematic tropes of like same sex relationships being treated for laughs. There's a whole plot of there's
oh,
a mentally
nobody is
disabled.
safe. Nobody's safe. Are you gay? Boom, this movie's got you. Are you mentally disabled? This got you. Are you a woman? This has got you. Are you a man? This has got you. Where do you fall on the gender spectrum? Doesn't matter. We're coming for all of you. What race are you? It doesn't matter. This is an affront to humanity as a species. You are not safe. Nobody is safe. Straight men aren't safe. Nobody is safe in this movie. And that's why I love it. It's such a champion for equality where no one group, no one identifying group in humanity, be it ethnic, be it sexual, be it religious, no one is safe. You're all fucked. This movie is shitting on your face. And for that, I salute you.
Well said. This is the funny thing is the J.Lo interview that J.Lo did a couple days ago, might be a couple days, might be a couple weeks. She was mentioning that Ben Affleck helped her come up with the name of the album 20 years ago on the set of Jersey Girl, and I'm like, girl, that was the set of Geely. Like, no one mentions that movie. Like, they've chosen to forget it. So that is just an awful movie that we don't like to think about. Awful, awful. And we would just like to give a shout out to J.Lo's new romantic comedy on Amazon Prime, Shotgun Wedding, which I am not done with. I just, due to just life, I have not been able to finish it, but it's good so far. So maybe next year when we talk about this list or whenever, maybe Shotgun is up there in the top 3. Who knows?
Thank you, J.Lo. Bust out your bottle of dessert wine, grab your tissues, and a pint of your favorite ice cream. It's a sad time as we break up with the missed objectives and key results. We're going to put on our favorite records from Lilith Fair, from Adele, from Taylor Swift, and we're going to do a little bit of crying as we dissect the heartbreak of where it all went wrong for romcoms theatrically, and why we're talking about romcoms finding a new life on streaming. So we've talked about how things went right for romcoms, so let's look into where things went wrong. So as you mentioned at the top, Kira, the high-performing romcoms kind of stopped becoming a thing around the late 2000s. And I have some theories around that, none of which can scientifically be proved, but hear me out. So I think, of course, there's the most obvious stuff around like the investment that we saw from studios into movies that were performing well at the box office became very predictable because of the 2008 crash, which affected every single industry that was, flourishing within the United States. Not just real estate, but anything that had to do with money and profit, So they wanted things that were sure bets. And if something didn't make money at the box office, it was never repeated. It was never seen as like a timing issue or a quality issue. It was just coming down to like simple statistics. So if a rom-com was released that didn't do well, it never got made again by the studio. And we started to see dwindling number of rom-coms and increase in the number of like IP and franchises that had a built-in audience that were bringing in a lot of people. There was also a lot of work done within the people making like big studio blockbusters around comic book movies and franchise movies to be even more inclusive to new audiences and bring them into it so that they could keep, making more money. So that was, of course, like a big part of it. And I think another thing that came in, and this is like my theory, is that romance stopped going down the road of rom-coms and instead became much more dramatic. And I would like to pin that, as I pin most things, to Twilight. Now, Twilight is romance, yes, but it's supernatural romance. So it's always got like something extra added to it. Now, a creepy old dude falling in love with an inappropriately young woman is nothing new. Ho ho! Social commentary.
Leonardo DiCaprio. Shots at Leonardo DiCaprio.
Unlike Leonardo DiCaprio, Edward Cullen is unaging. Snap. There's that caveat of like having a romance with something else attached to it instead of like the comedic aspect of two people meeting and the chemistry between them. It was more dramatic. We had started to see a lot of the young adult adaptations coming out. I Am Number 4, The Hunger Games, Divergent. All of them have romantic subplots, but they're not the main plot of the story. So I think that's another reason why like the rom-coms also fell away from theaters, because the romance that was doing well was like very dramatic. And then my final theory is that TV started coming into play. I think the advent of the Hallmark comedy, as we talked about, is very predictable. It is a mathematical formula created by scientists at the Hallmark Channel to have a movie go through like a very specific route of miserable career woman from New York. She's always from New York, because the women in San Francisco are having a fucking delightful time in their career, so we don't need to do this shit. Um,
Oh yes, yes, the tech bros keeping them happy, huh?
yeah.
Okay.
We're having the best time. Just we're not even part of the Hallmark universe. The West has literally not been conquered there because it's all like Northeast focus. Big city girl. She's perpetually alone, perpetually loveless. Moves to a small town where there's a Christmas tree farm or something, and it's Christmas and it's made a huge deal. And there's, like fucking 40 days of Christmas, even though December only has 31 days. And she's gonna meet a handsome guy who does like rugged bullshit work. She realizes how heartless and cold she has become as a big city girl and gives it all up to be with, lumberjack Sam from small town New Hampshire, maybe, or Connecticut. I
I
don't
was
know.
gonna say Maine, somewhere in like New Englandish. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, where they can pretend that they don't have a massive meth problem in the suburbs there. This is the part of Maine that's just like really beautiful. Not the Stephen King part, not that part. Like, we don't talk about that. This is like the beautiful, like, it's just Christmas all year round. And
They do it for the Instagram hashtag of my main squeeze.
yes, I think TV came in and took that.
I think this is actually pretty accurate. I think the TV, it's interesting to actually see that the going back to your earlier point about like these movies like Twilight taking the cake away from the romantic comedy genre. It's also because a lot of these already had built-in fan bases, so in a way they were, if they were books or video games or something before, they had the built-in fan bases and they tried to like lazily sprinkle a romance into them, right? And call it like, hey, it's also a romance, hello, pay attention to us. But it's mostly about like your theory of like financial crash. Of course they want sure
Yeah.
bets, and this is actually where we were looking at the box office before, how all the movies, rom-coms that were well performing were actually 1990s
Mm-hmm.
to about this time, and then it kind of took a hit, and then it
Yeah.
all went into like IPs and franchises and a lot of just like existing, either it's like a remake of something or it's a adaptation of something that already has fan bases.
Yeah,
And
I mean, we harken back to the days of 2010 where the financial crash had happened. We were recovering, but we had not recovered. The big cachet items on the box office was, of course, the first Iron Man movie and The Dark Knight. And that was the tone of what we were seeing. We were going to have Inception be a massive hit that year. But what we came out with from a rom com perspective were just a series of flops. We had Leap Year from my once favorite, not favorite anymore, Amy Adams. Girl, you've been letting me down. Amy Adams and Matthew Good in the most anti-Irish thing that I have ever seen since the American immigration policies of 1940s, 1840s.
the way I was enchanted, haha, by this
Oh,
movie was because of the accents and the just like the greens of the landscapes and everything. But yeah, it's not a strong rom-com, y'all.
Matthew Good is an Irish. I think this is him trying to gain points by doing an Irish accent. We had How Do You Know, a massive flop of 2010 with Reese Witherspoon, Paul Rudd, and Owen Wilson. This movie flopped at the box office, and with that cast, you're like left completely befuddled. You had Life as We Know It with Katherine Heigl and Josh Duhamel, both of them regulars within that particular genre, flopped. When in Rome with Kristen Bell and Josh Duhamel, again flopped. So you're seeing these movies underperform at the box office, and the studios got cold feet. They pulled their funding. They don't do that anymore. Movie stars were coming from other genres as well, so they weren't that invested in trying to find those stories around romantic comedies with the big stars. You don't have a Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn anymore. You don't have that connection. You had, I guess Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, and they were doing 15 million Avengers movies. So there's that. I have one more theory that
Hit
I
me.
got from an article called Everyone is Beautiful and No One is Horny.
Ah,
So
yeah.
the title of the article, I think, gives away the thesis, but basically it's that there is no expression of sexuality anymore, but the beauty and the objectification of bodies on screen was very much focused on being, about physical power and performance. So it was about showing people looking buff and cool while they're ready to kick people's asses and do karate, because that was the focus of the story as well, but it wasn't about like finding love. So the love interest is almost desexualized to a point where they're trying to make her a person because it's like, oh, she's not just a sexual object, she's a full-fledged character. But
That they're overdoing it.
yeah, it comes at the cost
Okay.
of like chemistry. Like, I
Yeah.
think Amy Adams and Henry Cavill had more chemistry in person than they did in the movie, because it was very much focused on like building up the individuality without taking into consideration that sexuality is also part of an individual. So it
Yeah,
was
what do they say if two stars promoting during like their like media junket don't have chemistry? It means that they
it
actually have a lot of chemistry in terms of like
it was completely sterile. I would say, like, if you compare the chemistry that you saw Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain have on the red carpet for promoting their HBO miniseries Scenes from a Marriage, you would have thought that it was something really touching and beautiful, and it was actually like a fucked up look at how
just
a relationship
awful
falls apart.
destroyed me. But also they had great chemistry in the
They
show as
have
well.
great chemistry in the show, and they had great chemistry in real life, and I just feel like movies don't capture that anymore. And I picked out like a particular quote from the article, and this I think applies to more of a sociological, like, audience psyche perspective. Millennials and zoomers are less sexually active than the generation before them. Maybe we're too anxious about the apocalypse. Maybe we're too broke to go out. Maybe having to live with roommates or our parents makes it a little awkward to bring a partner home. Maybe there are chemicals in the environment screwing up our hormones. Maybe we don't know how to navigate human sexuality outside of a rape culture. Maybe being raised on the message that our bodies are a nation ending menace has dampened our enthusiasm for physical pleasure. This is a lot to
You
take
thought
in.
we were talking about romance, dear listener. Holy shit. This is a lot to take in. I need to read this article, Raven. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
I think
I
the
I
points
think a lot.
raised here is it's
Yeah.
really impactful because it also talks about the psyche of the average audience consuming all of this. And it is very important to think about that because, like we talked about in the 1930s, we wanted something lighthearted to contrast with the harshness of the news and our daily reality surrounding us. But I think it has become even harder to ignore in this day of information because obviously we have information accessible to us at our fingertips, but we are also much more aware of the role that we play within the system, so it's harder to ignore.
This is this is actually something I've been thinking about because the new Magic Mike is out, Magic
Hmm.
Mike's Last Dance. And I was thinking about it after I think reading something. This movie is about male strippers. This series is about male strippers, so it's highly sexualized. But do we ever see a sex scene in it? Do we ever see actually Mike get intimate in a scene in the bedroom with someone? No. We see like the scenes leading up to maybe what would happen behind closed doors and maybe the scenes after. So we never get to see any actual sex in a movie. And this is I don't know. Steven Soderbergh has not shied away from that before, so I'm very interested to. I think all of your points are actually starting to fit into what we're seeing, the desexualization in movies, the implications keep happening, but we don't actually see the culmination of anything. And wow, what a bummer. So streaming and rom-coms are are rom-coms missing the mark on streaming, or are they a sure bet? So there have been some bangers on streaming rom-coms. Other than the ones Raven has already named, there were so many, right? There's something from Tiffany's, Amazon Prime, Zoe Deutsch, Kendrick Sampson. We have I Want You Back on Amazon with Charlie Day, Scott Eastwood, Jenny Slate, Gina Rodriguez, Manny Jacinto. We have a series which I really love on HBO Max called Starstruck, starring Nikesh Patel and Rose Matafeo. We have an upcoming Sundance darling already movie, Polite Society, which is likely to go to Apple TV. It's made by Nida Manzoor, starring Ritu Arya and Priya Kansara. And there's also another movie, What's Love Got to Do with It, directed by Shekhar Kapoor, starring Emma Thompson, Lily James, Shabana Azmi, Shazad Latif, and I believe this is on Tubi. Not exclusive to streaming, but I believe when it came to the US, it's a British movie, that it is a Tubi availability situation. So the thing about streaming that we kind of already touched on is that we're not used to hearing such names lead movies in theaters, right? Let alone this like hallowed genre of romance. We hear these like very diverse names in front of and behind the cameras. The plot lines are different, the story devices are different, the people who finance these productions and write these stories, they're very different on streaming compared to the theaters. And streaming is giving them a chance because honestly, when all is said and done, the risk is lower here. It's lower stakes compared to throwing a grand production like Mamma Mia and spending all the money that you have on Pierce Brosnan's plane tickets to Greece. It's very like it's again, it's about like creating an intimate story with stars that may not be at the level of, like, as you mentioned, Scarlett Johansson or Chris Evans or all these like now big superhero Marvel stars, and giving them a chance to tell an intimate story that's going to hit with some audiences. And that is literally the vehicle that streaming needs to continue churning out this kind of content, this kind of genre on their platforms. And part of it is that streamers throw one clueless executive per subgenre, right? And we imagine that they give them a private jet and no limit on their corporate Amex, and they're just going buck wild. But that's just Bela Bajaria. Streaming has no money right now. There's just Bela, guys. Only Bela gets that. And streamers, believe it or not, they are working probably from all these executives as streamers are working from a basement on Zoom with their video off. They probably have like under eye mask situations happening that are expired. All the serums are expired. But the thing is, they are working hard on this to give chances to creators in this genre to tell their story that have never been able to lead movies in theaters. And this is where streaming is really succeeding. Not just in this genre. I mean, horror is one that we've talked about before, and horror is having a resurgence of its kind, but so is romantic comedies.
Yeah, I think couple of things. Number one, they're not using gel masks, they're just using cucumbers because they can be reused in food later as a part of a salad. And
Yeah,
number
yeah, yeah, yeah.
two, like romance on its own can be pretty cheap to produce.
Yes, yes. And this makes it, as we were saying, easier to flood people with this kind of content because cheaper, a lot less hesitation on committing to multiple projects of this type. And it's not like Universal or Paramount or all of these big studios committing to that like one big project that's going to come out during holiday season. And there's a lot riding on that, big stars, big productions, big budget. Streaming has made it so that this is an evergreen genre. Like every week, every couple of weeks, every weekend, there is something new in this subgenre in romantic comedies that you'll have new to watch.
Yeah.
And
And I want to add to
yeah,
that newness because it's not there in theaters. So you have a
it's
perfectly
not
good
there.
excuse to stay at home and watch something that you can't watch in theaters. So that's where streaming is coming in for the audience, is saying, hey, all those things that were shut out initially from theaters, we're going to bring it back for streaming because we know that's what you're craving. You can't get it anywhere else.
Absolutely. And I have this quote, which I really liked, from Scott Meslow, who's the author of From Hollywood with Love. In an interview with the National News in 2022, he mentioned that, quote, basically everything that might make rom-coms unattractive to the studios makes them more appealing to the streamers. They're relatively cheap and straightforward to make, require minimal special effects, offer attractive leading roles for stars who want to show how funny and charming they are. Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon have all increased their rom-com output over the past few years, and I think they're just getting started. Hallelujah, Scott. Can't wait to see it. And so, with that in mind, is this a sure bet? Is this genre a sure bet on streaming? I declare yes. There's a few points, right? We are hardwired to love this genre. It's popular, it gets eyeballs, it gets fairly respected, it gets everyone talking about it on socials and in your life. And that's, as we've mentioned in previous pods, you need that marketing. You need that product marketing, baby. And I would say that this kind of access and model that streaming has enabled for rom-coms is actually making this genre prestige in a way. And the idea that streamers are so willing to take a chance on such diversity and breadth of stories that I think is spilling into prestige category. Think Bridgerton. It is a marquee show for Netflix. The reason I started watching Bridgerton after having ignored it for a while, even though I knew it was so popular, is because in my book it was prestige. It was the show of Netflix for a while.
I want to say that the prestige you're talking about has come from an inward reflection of the audiences themselves, where we have recognized the bias towards things that are feminine focused to be deemed lesser than by
Yeah.
critics, you know. I
Yes.
don't think Twilight is inherently more stupid than the Fast and Furious movies, but you're allowed to get a free pass with that shit because it's male driven.
It's the gaze too. The gaze is shifting because
Mhm.
the people who are telling these stories are changing. We are bringing diverse people to tell these stories to actually garner this prestige and garner this respect. The more you have a lover of the genre tell the story with care, the more you get people to see that passion behind this, you know?
Because the genre of romance has become an underdog, it's like you're getting people who are genuinely invested in the genre to come in and do work, and not like someone coming in for a paycheck, aka Michael Bay. So I would love to see like 360-degree like action shots that Michael Bay does in a romantic like period drama. Like, yes, do I want to see Pride and Prejudice by Michael Bay? Kind of, but I think again it's interesting to see people who understand the tropes and they're like, this is how we play it straight because we know what the people want, and this is where we can do a little bit of subversion, a little bit of fun, and they're trying to push that boundary with the audience who are appreciating it. I mean,
Yes.
they're doing well critically. They're not getting shit on critically just because they're like romantic fluff,
Well,
right?
that brings me to the point that critically all the things that we would treat as fluff are actually being well reviewed. So A Castle for Christmas, that came out I believe last year on Netflix with Brooke Shields, has 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is very well reviewed by critics. And a honestly like a pretty fluffy movie like Falling in Love shows up at a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that is higher than Marvel's Thor Love and Thunder, which is at 64% currently. So this genre is it has respect. And I think that period of drought of like really bad and cheesy rom-coms treating this genre with disrespect after, as you mentioned, the financial crash, I think that was really necessary for this generation of people to go back and reflect, like, I'm not being served. I grew up with this incredible genre and then it just stopped, and now this generation is causing this awakening of, let's go back to appreciating the romantic comedy. And this has also, I think, allowed the tricks and tropes to evolve a lot more and stay a lot more abreast of what people are responding to. I always think of like a coding boot camp versus like your textbook from college, from 2005 about MATLAB. How much do you learn from a 3-month coding boot camp? I mean, we're product managers, so we're always going to give like tech examples, versus how much of the 2005 textbook, whatever your college textbooks, do you use? It's about being able to stay up to date with what's happening in the here and now. And then I also think, more importantly and more powerfully, streaming gives creators a chance to reflect on big movements like Me Too. What does it mean to create a romantic comedy in the Me Too era? Allows them to correct and invite more people into the camp by being more inclusive, and, as we mentioned, subverting the idea of these tropes, like what is a happily ever after, a one size fits all kind of thing, addressing toxic masculinity and the patriarchy and its role in this genre in particular, challenging beauty notions. Should a white blonde female carry a movie, or is there room to have everyone be involved in this genre? And removing misogynistic elements as well. Like, this genre is just littered with, sadly,
Yeah.
misogyny.
I
For God's sake, making sure that they pass the Bechdel test.
Which is
Jesus
where,
Christ.
if for those who don't know, the Bechdel test, created by Alison Bechdel, is where two women who are named characters in the movie have a conversation with each other that isn't about a man. You would think this is simple. a lot of movies don't pass that, but I think back to like the time of 2001 where Bridget Jones's Diary tried to make us think that Renee Zellweger was like ugly and fat in that movie, and I just was so struck by how much of its time it was, and I'm like, we can address this where we don't have to pretend that women don't struggle with body issues and feeling undesirable, but we do not have to frame it as something so toxic.
Yeah, I'm here for this resurgence of romantic comedies on streaming, and I can't wait to see this. We've already seen this list that is coming for romantic comedies on streaming this year, and there's a lot lined up, and I just can't wait to see them. I am super excited, and streaming is doing something right here. Final thoughts and wrap up on all of this. So, streaming platforms have proven to be a great home for the revival of romantic comedies, a great breeding ground, and a fantastic tool for the dispersal of these movies. Before we discuss what other genres can experience such an awe-inspiring resurgence on streaming, I know, Raven, you had some final thoughts to share about the future of rom-coms.
Yeah, I really want to take some time to celebrate the fact that a genre, much like horror, that is deeply appreciated by women and people of color and queer people, people who don't necessarily see themselves represented in mainstream stories, they get to actually participate in the genre that they are so heavily invested in. I think a lot like horror, these movies have the opportunity to represent those perspectives in a very human lens. Everybody experiences love and connection and relationships, whether they're romantic or not. And the ability to portray those stories authentically with the people actually from those communities, like you talked about, we're going to see very interesting stuff if that keeps happening. And because it is low cost, I don't think that streaming will necessarily meddle a lot. Uh, Along with Shakespeare, I consider, Jane Austen and Oscar Wilde to be pioneers of the romantic comedy genre. And they have had so much to say about society that still remains relevant to this day, because it's about very deep human commitments and emotions that have stood the test of time, despite the fact that there have been a lot of shifts in, the role that women and minorities, and in Oscar Wilde's case, gay people play in society today. But a lot of those connections and a lot of those perceptive insights that they have still hold up. And I would like to see this happen in a new medium that makes it accessible to everybody because of the
Yes.
wide reach of streaming.
It's very easy to like let this, if this genre is done well, it's very easy to let the story flow through you, and then you don't even know that you've absorbed so many nice things that you like think of later. And I think I think streaming is like very well centered to actually diffuse and disperse this.
Yeah, it's a good home for these niche genres like we've talked about. We both love horror, we both love romance, and I think that other genres that we don't see play out in theaters as much are also going to start coming to streaming to find a home, the same way rom-coms have.
Yes, and I think honestly we're already seeing this, right? We're seeing like a sort of revival of westerns happening on streaming much more than the big screen. I mean, obviously the Sheridan verse, Yellowstone, 1883, 1929. What is the other show? Whatever. Those
Just
year
random
shows.
years. Yellowstone, Jellystone.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
a,
Yellowstone, now led by Matthew McConaughey.
yeah.
And most
Let's see
recently, Emily
a
Blunt.
gritty reboot of Yogi Bear called Jellystone. Let's do that.
That would be great. Streaming, are you listening? Yeah, we've seen The English, another Western about a time and a story that I was very unfamiliar with in back in the heyday of I suppose westerns, and led by of course Emily Blunt and Chaskey Spencer, and again like a romantic lead as a Native American man. That is very powerful to see, especially during this time. And I would highly recommend The English. Is on Amazon Prime. Very weird, very bold, incredible story, gorgeous visuals. Highly recommend this. And so westerns, I think, are having a moment. We'll see a lot more westerns, and we'll. I also think musicals on streaming are having a moment, little by little. Every show that I've seen that has been like a big show, The Boys, Lucifer, have dedicated, if not multiple, at least one episode to just being a musical. And to see that episode of The Boys, the musical episode, was a delight. Just spectacular and remarkable to see people perform. And I think we're used to seeing musicals as this like spectacular event that we go to the movies for, which they are very theatrical. But let's bring them, into your living room. Let's have more
Yeah.
musicals.
Like most things in Hollywood, the failure of Hello Dolly in the 1960s was the death of the movie musical. And so it went to television, it went to Glee, it went to Crazy Ex Girlfriend. And I
Oh,
think
Crazy
that
Ex-Girlfriend, yes.
shout out
Yeah.
to my girl, Rachel Bloom. My God, I love her. And you were talking about Westerns. You want to see Jason Momoa in Frontier, which is technically a Western because I believe he's based out of the Western frontier of Canada as a fur trapper. But I think, yeah, it goes to that
That's
genre
Apple
of.
TV, right?
No, he's in a different one on Apple TV called C. That's
Oh,
sci-fi
that's the
based.
one.
But yeah, the Jason Momoa looking hunky outdoors universe is a beautiful one
Going
that
strong.
is
Going strong.
supported by streaming, like you said, because it is the home of genres that have actually been out of the public consciousness for so long that I'm sure that there are some annoying Zoomer and Generation Alpha assholes who are like, this is so cool. What a groundbreaking thing to do, setting a story in cowboy times. And you're like, you've never heard of the good, bad, and the ugly, but there are a whole generation of people who've never seen a spaghetti western who will find this to be the first narrative that they have seen. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay. I'm glad more people are getting exposed to this. I hope this means that there's a
Hopefully that brings them
curiosity.
back, right? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. I want
When
them
you're
to.
exposed.
I also want to give a shout out to Red Dead Redemption, which is a big reason for why people are caring about Westerns again. I mean, Red Dead Redemption in turn was responsible for the creation of Old Town Road by Lil Nas X. So
Ah.
there's a whole thread that we can draw from that to Westworld to the English, and I think even more to come. You know, we have a really good show called Warrior, which was on Cinemax and now on HBO Max, about that's based on an original story by Bruce Lee about a man in 1860s, 1870s San Francisco, a Chinese immigrant during the height of the what was called the Yellow Peril at the time. And these are stories that need time to be told, and you don't see them anywhere else. So you're seeing them on your television screen or your laptop. Or this should be what streaming is for. It shouldn't necessarily come in to take the place of traditional cinema. It's like, who knows, the success of this can mean that we start seeing them in theaters again. I mean,
That's
musicals
the
did
thing.
get popular again. Fucking
Yes.
Les Mis happened, The Greatest Showman happened, all this bullshit happened because Gleeks were pushing the Glee remixes of songs to the top of the iTunes charts over the original. So who
La La
knows?
Land almost won the Oscar. Yes, it's very so opening up these portals and channels to bring new kinds of people into the genre, people discovering westerns and musicals and rom-coms through one story that they really connected with and having this like awakening inside them and then really going back and exploring more. Like that is the hope and that is what streaming is doing. That is what streaming is really good for, opening up accessibility is just like for stories is so powerful and we never really think about it. I was thinking about how like biopic adjacent movies or sorry series and movies are having a comeback as well. Winning Time on HBO Max, the rise of the Lakers dynasty, like, imagine this being in the theaters. Like, no one's gonna go see this, but it
Right.
had really great numbers as a show on HBO. And now we'll see how Air does, the movie about shoes, guys, because that is Amazon Studios movie. But with the MGM situation happening, it's gonna be exclusively in theaters at first, and then probably a little later go to Amazon Prime. But
Yeah.
we'll see how it does because I would see it in a heartbeat if it's in my living room. But am I going to see a movie about Air Jordans in the theater?
Well, I'm sorry. The winning combination of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon works so well in The Last Duel. I think it's going to result in the same box office lightning in a bottle with a movie about Michael Jordan starring two honkies from Boston.
It's the beards. I mean, Jodie Comer is the only one that came out looking like a star, but
Rest in
um,
peace, Jodie Comer, star. I don't know if she can recover from that. I'm praying for you, girl.
that's a, that's a rough
Don't.
one. She went from
He
that to
Ben
Free Guy,
Affleck
no, so she's fine.
Ben Affleck ruined Amy Adams. She ruined Jodie Comer. He finds these women and then he ruins them.
Ryan Reynolds got it. Free Guy, she did well in Free Guy. We have thoughts on Free Guy, but we'll just leave it there. We love Jodie Comer. And so, future of rom-coms on streaming is bright, and I think streaming should take more bets on these genres that have been sidelined, that have been ignored by theaters, and bring some love back, bring some audiences back, so like studio executives are able to sort of put some life back into these genres. And so I think that is where we'll leave it for today. Next time, Guys, we're entering Star Wars season, and I need everyone to just take a seat because this is going to be nonstop for me. You're going to hear a lot from me.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about how to build a roadmap, a Disney Plus, Dave Filoni, and a Star Wars case study. It's happening.
Send your thoughts and prayers for me as I navigate this treacherous minefield with Kira, because Star Wars is pretty near and dear to her heart, and I definitely appreciate the work and planning that the people behind the new iteration of Star Wars and their creative pursuits have done. So this is going to be really interesting from that aspect.
So until next time, full screeners, bye!
Bye, everyone.